Just because your wife feels a certain way doesn't mean it's cheating. Because one woman would say, oh, that's cheating. Another one wouldn't even care less. Like women's feelings, they change with the wind. It's certainly not a solid foundation in which to set a definition or measure fidelity against. There has to be a better framework than that to identify if something is cheating beyond a woman simply feeling like it is. Because if you're going to use that logic that it's cheating if a man consumes any content or uses any device that results in him getting turned on, if this is going to be the definition of cheating, then women are screwed. Like all these women who are watching the Hallmark movie rom-coms with the handsome hometown farmer boy, she can't deny that doesn't get her juices flowing. Or how about the millions of women who bought the 50 Shades of Grey? All of them secretly fantasizing that they're the ones being tied up by Christian Grey. Or what about the fact that 52% of American women own a vibrator? It is the most popular sex toy. Could it not be argued then that all of these would be considered infidelity and cheating if the husband simply felt that it was? Simply because she was watching a screen, using her imagination, or having a great solo session in her husband's absence that resulted in her getting turned on? You want to know how this would play out in reality if a man brought this fact up to her? If a man were to say, hey, you using a vibrator makes me insecure. I think it's cheating. I don't want you to watch these Hallmark movies. I don't want you to read these erotic novels. That would give her the ick. So there's just no way of saying that consuming content or using devices that results in a raising or an enhancing sexual experience or the release of it, that it's not okay for men without simultaneously looking at your wife and holding her to the same standard and level of accountability. And do you know what all of this sounds like to me? Well, it sounds exhausting. Like if you're at this point where you have to defend your behavior to your wife, I can almost guarantee you that you're in a reversed polarity, female-led marriage, where the woman believes that she has not only the right to have equal say on how you handle your sexual energy, but that she has greater authority than you to override your feelings and your conclusions about it. Bottom line here, guys, is that you should never subjugate your role as a man. And that includes anything outside the bedroom and inside the bedroom. And so now let me take a minute to talk to the guys of faith. My personal conclusion I have arrived at from a woman's point of view is that it is not my position as a wife to tell my husband what he can and cannot do with his own body. It is not the proper hierarchical order in which we ascribe to as a couple, as that would violate the head of household authority that the Bible calls for. If I am to submit to my husband, that doesn't mean only when I agree with him. But that also doesn't mean that I'm voiceless. My husband highly values me and my input. So my position as a wife is stated respectfully, respectfully being the key word here. I will share my opinions. I'll offer guidance. I'll convey to him how I feel about something. And if he chooses to make a decision I don't like, I let it go. It is what it is. This is his decisions. He's going to be held accountable for, but not by me, by God. And I would not want to be in that position. I'll tell you that much. But here's the reality. I'm not locked in to him if he's an incapable leader. If things get too out of hand, then I can always choose to leave. I mean, we are living in modern times here. If I divorce my husband, I'm not going to die. I'm not going to have to turn to prostitution like back in the biblical days. I always have the choice to leave. Now, I will say that this is probably easier for me as a woman to actually live this way, to submit to my husband, because he has shown to have great mental fortitude to exercise restraint. And he has proven to make good, reliable decisions for us and for our family. And I know that a lot of women aren't so lucky to be in that position, to make submitting that easy. But then you may also, Monica, what about 1 Corinthians 7:4? How can I reconcile masturbation with the verse that says that your body is not your own, but that rather your body belongs to your wife? But that standard is met when you have provided your wife with the opportunity first. That scripture is not meant to subjugate a husband's authority to his wife. Just like you wouldn't simply not eat food because she's not home, or maybe she was home, but she wasn't hungry. She doesn't tell you, well, I'm not hungry, so therefore you can't eat as well. She normally says, well, just eat without me. But when it comes to sex, somehow it's a different standard. The intent of the 1 Corinthians 7:4 is to provide consideration to the other person first, but should not be taken to create a burden on your wife where she is having to make every single little decision for you about what you bring into your body, both physically and visually. It's a scripture that calls for consideration of her needs, not a subjugation of your male authority. And if she really wants to point to that scripture saying that you're ungodly for doing that, also remind her that it also states that she really has no right to refuse. Her saying no in and of itself is unbiblical. So if you need to go that route, you can as well. Present her with the opportunity for a good time with you first. And if she declines or she's not physically present and won't be home shortly, then it's up to you to decide what you do from there. And I don't care what you decide. It's not my call. It's not your wife's call. It's your call. I will say, though, as my personal opinion, that if you cannot masturbate without pornography, like it doesn't seem appealing to you to do that without it, then you're probably not that horny. You could probably just wait. The only way to really wrong your wife with this scenario, in my opinion, is that you stop coming to her first. Maybe it's just too much effort, or you are just too afraid of rejection. She's rejected you a lot, so you've used it as a true cope or escape mechanism. You're using it to be an ostrich because you're too scared to confront her about this issue. Then yeah, that needs to be addressed and fixed. But there are times when I believe that it can be a much more loving choice to periodically take care of your own business when there's a very large libido gap, because placing the entire burden of your sexual energy and expression is a lot to ask a woman who just isn't wired with as strong of a drive as you are. For instance, let's say that you are a guy who is a once every day guy, and I think most men would love that if given the opportunity, but she is a gal who is good with once every 2 weeks. That's going to be a lot of pressure on her to perform. And if she's doing so, she's probably doing so out of obligation or duty. And true desire is not going to be present there. And she may show up for you physically. And sometimes she will catch up. Sometimes mentally, once she starts, she'll get going. But other times she just won't. And at that point, you are just using her as a tool of masturbation anyway. So whether you use your own hand or her body, like to me, that's the same thing. So, but yes, sometimes she is just going to be doing it for you, and she's going to be showing up out of duty or obligation. And you're just going to have to weigh whether or not you would rather take less sex from her, but those times are more genuine, or if you want more sex where mentally she's probably not going to be present like you would like. So going back to the whole cheating thing, unless you're interacting with an actual live human being and you're not merely passively consuming content, that's simply not cheating. Cheating is something that involves a personal interaction. Cheating is not defined by whatever your wife subjectively wants it to mean. Touching your own body, whether that's to clean it or to provide yourself with sexual pleasure, is not cheating, any more so than her watching a Hallmark movie and getting turned on by that handsome farmer boy. I will say that transmuting or redirecting your sexual energy, this distraction approach can probably work for a decent portion of men who get regular sex from their wife 2 or 3 times a week, but it's just not a realistic option for men who are living in true sexless marriages, which is 25 to 50% of marriages. And of those that aren't sexless, the man is still going to want to have way more sex than the woman typically. So almost every man is going to be faced with this situation on a regular basis. So yes, distraction might work with small libido gaps and for these couples that have a relatively healthy sex life. However, that's not the majority of most men. And while you should absolutely practice self-control, it's just not smart to give in to every biological urging and prompting when it comes up. We would never encourage any person who is craving a candy bar to eat a candy bar every single time that urge came up. But once in a while, it's probably not going to be a problem. So we just really have to stop here and use some common sense and stop all these black and whites, these all or nothing approaches that just are not going to be realistic for the majority of marriages. Asking a man to just accept a wife who constantly refuses sex and expecting him to be okay with being celibate is one thing, but then to also mandate and remove all sources of orgasms is a whole different level. It's not realistic, and it's not an approach that is loving or considers both sides. Because if this is the route that you choose to go as a man, what's going to happen is that you are going to build up way too much resentment. And all that anger is going to destroy you internally. And so you might not physically divorce your wife, but mentally you're going to divorce your wife. It's a natural progression. But this is the approach everyone sells you. You just have to take it, guys, even if it emotionally kills you on the inside. That's not loving to you. I want better for you. I want you to be considered. I want your needs to be fulfilled. I want women to be held accountable. But this is the approach that men are taught, that it's always the man who has to be beholden to his wife's libido, while never holding the wife's feet to the fire as though they are to be held to a different standard. So for a marriage to survive and even thrive long term, a man must reclaim his sexual frame. And to do so, I'm going to recommend the following. Number one, I want you to no longer use your wife's low libido as the standard or reference point for your own sexual activity or expression. The second is I'd like you to use the proper order of operations to seek connection with your wife first. And if she's not physically present, then you can bypass this step unless she's going to be home shortly, because you don't want to ruin dinner by snacking, if you know what I mean. And third, you're going to stop removing permission from your wife as to whether or not you can touch your own body. You are not required to ask your wife whether or not you can provide yourself pleasure, because the fact is, when you are seeking permission from your wife, it is placing you in a de facto female-led marriage where she decides what is right or wrong for you, and she becomes a mother figure and the sole arbiter of sin. And being a sexually framed man also means you have to be transparent. It means to be self-validated, to answer only to yourself and to God, which means that you will not hide the fact that you periodically may choose to take care of your own business. You're not going to hide this from your wife. I mean, you don't have to go wave it in her face. But men who hide the fact that they do that do so because they're ashamed, or they don't want to deal with her backlash or the drama that's going to come from it, or being accused of cheating, all the things we talked about before. And if this is you, if you guys cannot handle this backlash of your own decisions, then you're going to need to work on your frame as a man. Most women are not going to be super excited by the idea that you are masturbating. But the fact is, you invited her to the party first, and she declined. So that's on her. She had first dibs. And if she truly is upset with that, then she's going to know, oh, well, maybe next time I should say yes. If she really doesn't want you watching pornography, she really doesn't want you to masturbate, she will step up. But if she just decides that no, not only is she not going to step up, but then she's going to use that as an excuse to complain, you got to look at that discrepancy between what she says and what she does, or what she doesn't do.